My name is J. Paul Newman, and we are proud to announce that this is the 150th broadcast edition of the District Attorney Show on the WGNS Action Line. Our first broadcast aired on WGNS on November the 1st, 2013. The District Attorney's Office wants to express our sincere appreciation to WGNS, its management, and employees for providing us with the opportunity to inform the Rutherford County area of criminal activity in our community. We want to give special thanks to station owner Bart Walker. Bart Walker was the creator of the program concept, and Bart, with his wealth of broadcast experience, provided us with invaluable support, constant encouragement, and unparalleled mentorship. We also want to thank WGNS President Scott Walker. Scott Walker has produced the vast majority of our broadcasts. Scott has not only ensured that our broadcast was professionally presented, but his many contributions on the podcast format highlighted not only his very special talents, but also manifested his dedication to our community. We also want to thank WGNS Program Director Brian Barrett. Brian has made so many contributions, to include serving as our program producer whenever he was needed. Brian also created promos, and Brian Barrett was always there with great advice, caring guidance, and strong encouragement. It is because of the help and assistance of these three wonderful men who have shared their talents in so many ways that over the past decade, this broadcast has been available on the first Friday of each month. As we begin this 150th edition of the District Attorney Show on the WGNS Action Line, we recognize and say thank you to Bart Walker, Scott Walker, Brian Barrett, and all of the other great people at WGNS. But we also realize we would not be here today without you, the listeners. To our listeners, we say thank you and wish for all of you a happy, healthy, and blessed day.
This is the WGNS Action Line, talking with Rutherford County newsmakers about what matters most to you.
Your host, J. Paul Newman of the monthly District Attorney Show.
The viewpoints and opinions expressed on this broadcast are the viewpoints and opinions of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints and opinions of this show, its host, or the management of this station. You are listening to WGNS. We welcome everyone to the program. My name is J. Paul Newman. My co-hosts today are Rutherford County District Attorney General Jennings Jones and Rutherford County Assistant District Attorney Trevor Lynch. We thank WGNS for providing the airtime. And we also thank our producer, Scott Walker. Most of all, we thank you for listening. We will begin our broadcast after you listen to these important messages.
Local farmers, local meats, vegetables, and other produce at the Winter Spring Rutherford County Farmers Market.
Bundle up and make your way every Friday at Lane Agri Park. Fresh cut greens and oven warm bread, jars of sweet jam will be read. Good food, good folks, flavors that shine from winter's chill to spring sunshine. Every Friday Rutherford County Market at Lane Agri Park.
Local farmers with local meats, vegetables, and other produce at the Winter Spring Rutherford County Farmers Market every Friday through April.
You'll find it there from frost to boom the seas and sing. We're winter tough and welcoming spring. So bundle up and make your way every Friday at Lane Agri Park.
At the Lane Agri Park in Murfreesboro.
The monthly District Attorney Show, heard the first Friday of each month, exclusively on News Radio WGNS. Your host, J. Paul Newman, will now take you on a journey to explore recent Rutherford County court cases, cold cases, and more.
A search for truth.
We welcome everyone to the program. My name is J. Paul Newman. We will highlight a case that focuses on a recurring disaster. It is a family catastrophe that can lead to murder. The catastrophe is domestic violence. One of the murders that domestic violence led to is the 2013 Valentine's Day murder of Carla Pearman. The Carla Pearman case will be our focus on From Call to Conviction.
From call to conviction. Time now for a look back at one of the more intriguing and important cases for this community. From the crime, the investigation, to the prosecution.
On our case study today, we'll review a murder that gained national attention and touched the lives of many people in our Rutherford County community. It is the 2013 Valentine's Day murder of Carla Pearman. The location of the crime is the 800 block of Canatack Lane here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It is the home of Carla Pearman. It is in the very early morning hours of February the 14th, 2013. But to fully understand this case, we must begin our story on December the 14th, 2012 at approximately 6:30 a.m. Carla Pearman's 7-year-old son is frantically running down the street toward his school, Blackman Elementary. At the same time, one of his teachers is driving to work. The teacher is shocked by what she observes. She sees a 7-year-old student that she knows running down the street, and the shocking part is that the temperature is in the low 20s and that the child is barefooted and that all the child is wearing is his pajamas. The teacher stops and puts the child into her car and drives to school. There, an investigation begins. At the school, the child tells the police why he was outside in the sub-freezing weather and why he was barefooted and wearing only his pajamas. He explains that earlier that morning he was asleep in his bedroom when he was suddenly awakened. After being rousted out of bed, he was violently kicked in his stomach and choked by his attacker. He said the reason he left the safety of his own home was to escape from the person who had attacked him. The person he was fleeing from was his stepfather, Jacob Pearman. While interviewing the child, investigators observed that the child has fresh and visible injuries to his stomach and throat. Through their investigation, enough evidence is developed to charge the child's stepfather, Jacob Pearman, with child abuse. When interviewed by the authorities, Jacob Pearman denied hurting his stepson, claiming the injuries were caused by wrestling. Jacob Pearman was relying heavily on the support of his wife, Carla Pearman, to buttress and support his story. A hearing date was scheduled for February the 14th, 2013. Carla Pearman decided that she did not believe her husband's story. She began to tell her friends that she was not going to testify for Jacob Pearman and that she was going to get a divorce. On February the 13th at 9:30 a.m., Carla Pearman met with Murfreesboro divorce attorney John Green. Divorce filings were being prepared. On that same day, Carla told several friends and her brother that she was going to pack up Jacob Pearman's clothes and that she was going to ask him to leave the house that night. When Carla arrived home that evening, she packed Jacob Pearman's clothes and placed them by the door. Later, when Jacob Pearman arrived home, he saw the clothes. The couple argued several times that night. The argument continued well past midnight and into the morning of February the 14th, 2013, the day that Jacob Pearman was scheduled to appear in court and answer the charge of child abuse. It was also Valentine's Day, but most importantly, it was going to be the last day of Carla Pearman's life. It was the day that Jacob Pearman would beat, choke, and kill Carla Pearman. Following the murder, Jacob Pearman fled the scene, but later that day he was arrested in Coffee County, Tennessee. Following the arrest, Murfreesboro detective James Abbott interviewed Jacob Pearman. Pearman told Detective Abbott that he did beat his wife, Carla. He told the detective that he also choked Carla. He said he choked her for a long time. He said that he knew he had killed her. The confession was videotaped and was played at Pearman's preliminary hearing. After watching the tape, General Sessions Judge David Lowry sent the case to the Rutherford County Grand Jury. In July of 2013, the Rutherford County Grand Jury indicted Jacob Pearman for the first-degree murder of Carla Pearman and the aggravated assault and child abuse of Carla Pearman's 7-year-old son. The case was assigned to the court of Judge David Bragg. Jacob Pearman was represented by Murfreesboro attorneys Luke Evans and Heather Parker. The prosecution team consisted of District Attorney General William C. Weitzel, Jr., and Assistant District Attorneys J. Paul Newman and Dana Miner. The trial began on January the 12th, 2015. After listening to 7 days of testimony, the jury began their deliberation. The deliberation lasted approximately 7.5 hours over a 2-day period. Then, on January the 19th, 2015, the jury returned to the courtroom and announced they had reached a decision. The jury found Jacob Pearman guilty of the first-degree murder of his wife, Carla Pearman, and guilty of the aggravated assault and child abuse of Carla Pearman's 7-year-old son. The murder charge carried with it an automatic sentence of life in prison. The other 2 charges required Judge Bragg to conduct a sentencing hearing. On March the 2nd, 2015, Judge Bragg sentenced Jacob Pearman to a sentence of 3 years for the child abuse charge and 5 years on the aggravated assault charge. Those 2 counts were ordered to be served concurrently, but consecutively to the life sentence. The effect of the 3 sentences meant that 32-year-old Jacob Pearman would not be eligible for parole until he was over 80 years old. Jacob Pearman is now serving that sentence in the Tennessee Department of Corrections. Murfreesboro detective James Abbott led the investigation of this case and is here with us today. Detective Abbott, we appreciate you taking the time to be here. This was really 2 investigations, so it really was a team effort. Who were the law enforcement officers who were involved in these two investigations, and what roles did they play?
Well, the child abuse investigation, which was conducted on 12/14 of 2012, involved Detective Ava Radley and Detective Jennifer West. They're with our Special Victims Unit, and they investigate child abuse cases, sexual assault cases, domestic violence cases. And so they were the initial detectives investigating the child abuse allegation. Also, there was, I believe it was Sergeant Sean Murphy, Officer or Detective Christy English. Detective Christy English also was assisting with that investigation as well. And then in the homicide investigation, it was Detective Gorham, Sergeant Chris Ashley, myself, Lieutenant Mike Taylor, Sergeant Katrina Henderson, Sergeant Von Pogdi, and a number of other officers, detectives that first responded to the scene there at the homicide when the call first went out. As you know, I mean, by the time it gets to a trial, there may be 100 witnesses on the criminal justice side. So there was a number of officers or detectives for the initial investigations, particularly in the homicide case, and then throughout the entire process, 2-year process of getting this to trial.
I would like to ask you a series of questions designed to tell us more about the details that led to the murder of Carla Pearman and the abuse of her son and the arrest of Jacob Pearman. My first question is, in summary form, what role did the school officials play in the child abuse investigation, and how would you describe their cooperation?
Their cooperation was very important from the get-go of the investigation, particularly when they found the child on December 14th in his pajamas, barefooted, in 20-degree weather. Another issue that came up to light was apparently they had started noticing other issues with the child prior to this. And so, and when you have a case involving child abuse, you will often see that there are things that are leading up before the actual physical, maybe before the physical abuse is even noticeable. And they were able to provide details for that information as well.
My next question is, after Jacob Pearman had been charged with the abuse of the child, did Jacob Pearman continue to live in the home? And if so, did the child also live there?
Jacob and Carla actually did continue to live there at the house. The child was actually removed by Child Protective Services. He actually moved and began living with his biological father during this time period. But Carla and Jacob initially, because keep in mind, during the initial investigation of child abuse, Carla did defend Jacob and was defending him. And so him and her continued to live together, and Child Protective Services thought it would be best for the child to be placed with the father.
The child abuse occurred on December the 14th, 2012, and the murder of Carla Pearman occurred exactly 2 months later, on February the 14th, 2013. From your investigation, what role, if any, did the child abuse charge play in the murder of Carla Pearman?
It was the reason, I really believe. This was a situation, it was a classic case study of domestic violence with Jacob. It was about control. It was about controlling his new wife. And so during the child abuse, Ms. Pearman had made reference that her child was cried too much sometimes and was kind of a baby and very defensive of Jacob Pearman. As those 2 months passed, friends and family had been talking to her. She had been talking to her child, and she started to begin doubting Jacob's stories about how the child was injured when he would be in his care. And so she was beginning to seek other options and to try to get out of the relationship and trying to get her son back. And she knew the best way for that would be a divorce. As this was going on for the 2 months, Jacob realized that he was beginning to lose control of his wife and the situation there. And so I believe on February 14th is that morning he realized that he had lost control and that he felt betrayed. As a matter of fact, he even said that in the interview. I felt betrayed. He indicated she was choosing her son over him. And so I believe the child abuse was the beginning for this homicide.
Detective Abbott, we do not want to forget about the victim, Carla Dillard Pearman. Please tell us about her.
Carla was 30 years old. She was from Manchester, Tennessee. She was from a very close family. And her family, I mean, they loved her very much. She had, I believe, 3 brothers, if I'm not mistaken, and all 3 brothers, they looked at her as their little sister. And she was very loyal, very friendly, very outgoing. And that was another thing that the friends all pointed out. was that in 2011, after she met Jacob in 2011, began dating, that's when they started noticing these issues with her, as far as it seemed like he began controlling her more, keeping her away from friends, or, telling her how to eat, dress. So these friends started noticing all this, and the family did as well.
And we obviously do not want to forget the family of Carla Dillard Pearman. Tell us about their cooperation.
The family was very supportive during the investigation and prosecution of the case, to include the child's biological father, his family even. It seemed like a one large family coming together at meetings and things when we would be discussing the case, as during the pretrial discussions with these family members. Fortunately, her mother or her father passed away recently, and her mother, I still believe, is still emotionally scarred by this event.
Detective Abbott, we want to thank you and the other members of the Murfreesboro Police Department for the excellent work that was performed in bringing Jacob Pearman to justice. Do you have any parting comments?
As I said before, this was a classic case study of domestic assault, beginning to control from the starting of dating to marriage, controlling the person, the individual. If you are in a situation like this, or you see someone or know someone that is, reach out, try to get them help. And remember, try not to do it alone. Carla tried to do it alone that night on February the 13th, tried to handle this situation by herself, and it cost her life.
If you are the victim of domestic violence or know someone who is, contact the Domestic Violence Center for guidance and assistance. The Rutherford County Domestic Violence Center is located at 1423 Kensington Square North in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. The number to call is 615-896-7377. Also, the Domestic Center hotline is 615-896-2012. Domestic violence is a problem in our community. Do what you can to stop domestic violence.
Host J. Paul Newman, heard exclusively on News Radio WGNS.
The Action Line on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com. Every homicide, every rape, every robbery affects the entire community. People who are victims of these crimes need closure. The people who committed these crimes must be held accountable. Law enforcement needs the community's help in seeking justice. Please listen as we review an unsolved mystery in this month's Cold Case Profile.
On today's Cold Case Profile, we will be asking for your help in solving a brutal murder. The date was May the 17th, 2020, and the time was approximately 5 a.m. when the Murfreesboro Police Department responded to a duplex in the 700 block of East Northfield Boulevard. Upon their arrival, the police discovered the lifeless body of 45-year-old Thomas Holland. The body is laying on the duplex driveway. Thomas Holland had been shot several times. Murfreesboro Police Detective Cody Thomas was assigned as the lead investigator on the case. As part of the investigation, an autopsy was conducted, and it was determined that Thomas Holland had been drinking prior to the shooting. Detectives also believed that there may have been an altercation that led up to Thomas Holland's death. Early in the investigation, the Murfreesboro Police Department did develop one person as a possible suspect. However, later investigators were able to exclude that person as not being responsible for the death of Thomas Holland. The Murfreesboro Police Department continues their investigation, but as of today, no one has been arrested for this brutal crime. Thomas Holland lived in Murfreesboro, and he had been a volunteer at the Greenhouse Ministries. We ask that you please join law enforcement, and Thomas Holland's family in seeking justice for Thomas Holland. If you have any information regarding the murder of 45-year-old Thomas Holland, please contact the Murfreesboro Police Department. The number to call is 615-893-2717. That number again is 615-893-2717. Or you can email your information to crimetips@murfreesborotn.gov. That email address again is crimetips@murfreesborotn.gov. And if you wish to remain anonymous, you can provide your confidential information through Crime Stoppers. If your information leads to an arrest and a conviction in this case, you may be eligible to receive up to $1,000. The number to call is 615-893-7867. That number again is 615-893-7867. Please help us bring closure to those who knew and loved Thomas Holland, and help us to bring justice to whoever caused his death. This is J. Paul Newman, and this has been today's Cold Case Profile. If you missed any part of this program, it will be available shortly as a podcast on the WGNS website. This is Paul Newman. When we return, we will all go inside the courts. You are listening to this special edition of the Action Line on WGNS.
Clarissa Smith is running for School Board Zone 4 because she cares about our kids' future and empowering teachers. But don't just take our word for it. Here's John Harney.
I certainly believe Clarissa is willing to stand up and state her views on issues and not be shy in doing that. I certainly endorse her as a candidate for the school board.
I'm Clarissa Smith, humbly asking you for your vote for School Board Zone 4.
Paid for by Friends of Clarissa Smith, School Board Zone 4. Clarissa Smith, Treasurer.
The Action Line on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
The viewpoints and opinions expressed on this broadcast are the viewpoints and opinions of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints and opinions of this show, its host, or the management of this station. You are listening to WGNS.
This is Inside the Courts. A look at this month's trials, pleas, and grand jury action. Inside the Courts is presented as a courtesy of the Rutherford County Clerk's Office.
Here's Assistant Rutherford County DA Trevor Lynch.
Good morning, everyone. This is Assistant District Attorney General Trevor Lynch, and today I will be your tour guide through this episode of Inside the Courts. And we begin this segment by stating that none of the defendants named in the upcoming trials have been convicted, and they are presumed by all law to be innocent. With that as a prelude, we will now go inside the courts. Cases currently pending in our circuit court include State v. Shakira Brown. On October 13th of last year, officers with the Murfreesboro Police Department responded to a 911 call for shots fired at a residence on Lascassas Pike in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Upon arrival, officers discovered Mr. Jaleel Turner lying unresponsive on the floor of his apartment, suffering from a gunshot wound to the abdomen. Mr. Turner later died from his injury. Detective William Pullis was assigned as lead investigator. Ms. Shakira Brown has been charged with second-degree murder. A preliminary hearing was held on February 17th of this year before the General Sessions Court. Upon hearing testimony, the court found probable cause to bind the matter over to the grand jury. Ms. Brown is represented by counsel Mr. Brent Horst. The state is represented by Assistant District Attorney Trevor Lynch. State versus Clinton Johnson. On October 27th of last year, officers with the Murfreesboro Police Department responded to an emergency assist where a man identified as Harold Cruz had sustained injuries to the head. At the conclusion of the investigation, Mr. Clinton Johnson was charged with first-degree murder. On January 24th of this year, Mr. Johnson appeared before the General Sessions Court of Rutherford County and bound his case over before presentment to a grand jury. In August of last year, the grand jury indicted Mr. Johnson for first-degree murder and aggravated robbery. His next appearance is scheduled for May 28th of this year. Mr. Johnson is represented by counsel, Mr. Drew Perkins, and the state is represented by Assistant District Attorney Matt Westmoreland. State versus Rocky Melton, Sashi Rainey, and Billy Mahon. On September 4th of 2024, officers with the Smyrna Police Department responded to a gas station on North Lowry Street in Smyrna, Tennessee. Once on scene, officers located Mr. Harold Webb, who had sustained a single gunshot wound to the chest. Mr. Webb was transported to Stonecrest Hospital, but ultimately died from his injury. Investigators located several individuals on scene, including Mr. Rocky Melton and Miss Sashi Rainey. Officers later learned 2 other suspects fled the scene, Mr. Billy Mahon and a juvenile suspect. The investigation revealed that Mr. Melton, Miss Rainey, Mr. Mahon, and the juvenile suspect attempted to rob Harold Webb. Mr. Webb resisted. He was shot by the juvenile suspect. Police later apprehended Mr. Mahon and the juvenile suspect. All parties have been charged with first-degree murder, attempted especially aggravated robbery, and conspiracy to aggravated robbery. Mr. Melton was also charged with providing a handgun to a juvenile. Mr. Melton is represented by counsel, Mr. Ben Lewis, and Miss Rainey is represented by counsel, Mr. Josh Crane. Mr. Mahon is represented by counsel, Mr. Christian Moore. They are scheduled to appear before the Circuit Court Judge on April 30th of this year. The state is represented by Assistant District Attorney Trevor Lynch. Resolved matters before the Circuit Court. State versus Cameron Jordan. On September 28th of 2022, officers with the Murfreesboro Police Department responded to a 911 call for shots fired at a restaurant on Rutherford Boulevard in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Upon arrival, officers located the body of Mr. Kevin Washington. Mr. Washington had been shot several times and died from his injuries. A firearm was located under Mr. Washington's body. Investigators interviewed employees and learned that Mr. Washington came to the restaurant to meet his girlfriend, an employee. Mr. Washington arrived to find another male, Cameron Jordan, was there for the same reason. Mr. Jordan had been attempting to have a romantic relationship with Mr. Washington's girlfriend. The two men began to argue, and at some point both men produced firearms and began shooting at each other. Mr. Jordan shot Mr. Washington as Mr. Washington was attempting to run away. On April 10th of this year, Mr. Jordan entered a plea of guilty to the offenses of voluntary manslaughter and possession of a firearm during a dangerous felony. The defendant was ordered to serve a total sentence of 6 years in the custody of Tennessee Department of Corrections. The defendant was represented by counsel, Mr. Derek Howard, and the state was represented by Assistant District Attorney Matt Westmoreland. Matters currently scheduled for trial in the upcoming year. A trial is scheduled to begin on May 4th of 2026 on Joseph Gann for allegations of second-degree murder, attempted second-degree murder, aggravated assault, reckless endangerment with a firearm, and tampering with evidence, as well as employing a weapon during an offense and employing a firearm during a dangerous felony. The defendant is represented by Mr. Josh Crane. The state is represented by Assistant District Attorneys Trevor Lynch and Matt Westmoreland. A trial is scheduled to begin on August 3rd of 2026 on Juan Charco for allegations of first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, aggravated assault, tampering with evidence, reckless endangerment with a firearm, and employing a firearm during a dangerous felony. The defendant is represented by counsel, Mr. Jeff Cherry, and the state is represented by Assistant District Attorneys Trevor Lynch and Matt Westmoreland. A trial is scheduled to begin August 24th of 2026 on Salim Hamilton for allegations of first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, possession of a handgun by a convicted felon, employing a weapon during an offense, and employing a firearm during a dangerous felony. The defendant is represented by counsel, Ms. Heather Parker, and the state is represented by Assistant District Attorneys Trevor Lynch and Matt Westmoreland. A trial is scheduled to begin September 14th of 2026 on Ahmad Ali and Kenyon Crawford for allegations of first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, attempted especially aggravated robbery, tampering with evidence, and employing a firearm during a dangerous felony. The defendants are represented by counsels Mr. Brian Lewis and Mr. Luke Willoughby. The state is represented by Assistant District Attorneys Trevor Lynch and Matt Westmoreland. A trial is scheduled to begin on September 28th of 2026 on Canthony Williams for allegations of first-degree murder, especially aggravated robbery, possession of a handgun by a convicted felon. The defendant is represented by counsel Mr. Rusty Perkins, and the state is represented by Assistant District Attorneys Trevor Lynch and Matt Westmoreland. And that concludes this episode of our look inside the courts.
This is Peter Demas, and our family is inviting your family to come eat with us at Demas's restaurant. The salmon is my favorite, and then we have a variation that's on a regular menu for the salmon imperial that has some Alfredo, some crab, some shrimp on it. But the salmon is fresh, and we cut it fresh, but all of our fish you can either get blackened or you can get it with our regular seasoned salt, and either way you do it is just out of this world. And I'm not a fish person, but I will eat it at Demas's all the time. Come eat with us at Demas's restaurant on Northwest Broad Street.
What's the law? Time now for an examination of the laws of Tennessee. This is not intended to be legal advice and is being presented solely for the informational benefit of our listening audience. You should always consult with an attorney whenever you need or rely on legal advice.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome to What's the Law? In this segment, we're going to discuss Tennessee's law of diminished capacity. Unlike the statutory defense of insanity, diminished capacity is a rule of law established and recognized by our higher courts. While Tennessee Code Annotated 39-11-501 sets out the affirmative defense of insanity, it is Tennessee's Supreme Court and Court of Criminal Appeals that first decided to create and tell us how to apply the defense of diminished capacity. Tennessee Code Annotated 39-11-201A2 states, no person may be convicted of an offense unless the culpable mental state required for that offense is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. It is here that the defense of diminished capacity is conceived. Based on our higher court's creation of diminished capacity, Tennessee's rules of criminal procedure were amended to include such defense. Specifically, Tennessee Rules of Criminal Procedure, Rule 12.2b. Unlike insanity, the courts place the burden upon the defendant. Rather, like insanity, the courts place the burden upon the defendant to give notice of its intent to use the defense of diminished capacity. Also like the defense of insanity, diminished capacity requires the testimony of an expert witness. Diminished capacity is not considered a justification or excuse for a crime, but rather an attempt to prove that the defendant was incapable of the requisite intent required to commit the crime charged. So a defendant claiming diminished capacity contemplates full responsibility for the act of committing the crime, but denies the existence of the culpable mental state required to establish a criminal offense. This is because of a mental disease or defect and an inability to form the required culpable mental state was because of that mental disease or defect. While the affirmative defense of insanity and the rule of law defense of diminished capacity are similar in their application, they are notably different. Insanity is shown by proof that at the time of the offense, as a result of a mental disease or defect, the person lacked substantial capacity to either appreciate the wrongfulness of the person's conduct or to confirm their conduct to the requirements of law. However, diminished capacity requires proof that the person was incapable of forming the intent required to commit the offense because of a mental disease or defect. The fact that a mental disease or defect impacted or impaired a person's capacity to form the requisite mental state is not enough to trigger the defense of diminished capacity. The defense of insanity is an affirmative defense, which, if proven, is a defense to the criminal offense and may require a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity. However, diminished capacity is not technically a defense. It is instead proof presented by the defense to negate mens rea, the intent required to commit a criminal offense. While a verdict of not guilty is possible, it is not because of an affirmative defense of diminished capacity. It is because the defendant was incapable of forming the requisite intent required to commit the charged offense. The final decision as to whether or not a defendant was incapable of forming the requisite intent to commit a criminal offense because of a mental disease or defect rests with the sound discretion of a jury. However, if the defense cannot establish sufficient proof that the defendant was incapable of forming that requisite intent, the court may exclude any testimony by any expert the defendant would intend to call and rule that a jury will not hear any proof of diminished capacity. As with many of the subjects I discuss, the time needed to fully delve into the topic far exceeds the time we have. This is only meant as a brief glimpse of what the law of diminished capacity in Tennessee is. As always, thank you, listeners, for joining us today, and this concludes our What's the Law segment. Stay safe and be blessed.
The viewpoints and opinions expressed on this broadcast are the viewpoints and opinions of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints and opinions of this show, its host, or the management of this station. You are listening to WGNS.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-478-6430 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-478-6430. That's 800-478-6430. What do you have to lose? Call 800-478-6430. Again, 800-478-6430.
The monthly District Attorney Show, heard exclusively on News Radio WGNS the first Friday of each month.
If you missed any part of this program, it will be available shortly as a podcast on the WGNS website. As we end our program today, we thank WGNS for providing the airtime. And we thank our producer, Scott Walker. Most of all, we thank you for listening. We leave now by saying, a safe community is the responsibility of each and every one of us. For my two co-hosts, Rutherford County District Attorney General Jennings Jones and Rutherford County Assistant District Attorney Trevor Lynch. This is J. Paul Newman, bidding all of you a safe and blessed day.
The District Attorney's Office thanks you for listening to today's program. If you have any information regarding criminal activity in our community, please contact one of our law enforcement agencies. The information presented on today's show is solely for informational benefit and not intended to be legal advice. You should always consult an attorney whenever you need or rely on legal advice. Rutherford County's most trusted name in news. Talk Radio WGNS, Murfreesboro.
Do you want your money to work hard for you? Who doesn't? South Central Bank has 2 CD specials that will help your money grow. South Central Bank has a 5-month CD with an annual percentage yield of 4.15% or a 25-month CD with an annual percentage yield of 3.8%. 2 great ways to put your money to work. You choose the term that works best for you. $500 minimum balance to obtain the APY. Stop at our location at 1602 West Northfield Boulevard in Georgetown Park today and take advantage of our 2 great rates. South Central Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.